Hello. Welcome to Community Matters. This is your host, Becky Steinbruner. I'm honored to be here with you this afternoon for a couple of hours to talk about important things happening in our community. This is a forum for your voice and others in the community to talk about what is important to you and your thoughts on issues of the day. I want to first thank the wonderful facility where we are here at Santa Cruz Voice Studio. That is at the Satellite Work Space and Digital Media Center, located at 325 SoCal Avenue in Santa Cruz. It is between Ocean Street and the San Lorenzo River in Santa Cruz, and is a lovely place to work. If you are interested in having a place that is clean, safe, quiet, and very comfortable, you should come check it out. The first Wednesday of every month is free, and you can come and take a look. You can take a tour, just stop in or call and make an appointment. Again, that's Satellite Workspace and Digital Media Center in Santa Cruz. We share this wonderful facility with community television, a great gem in our community that makes it possible for us to have recordings of many of our local government meetings. It isn't always easy to attend a county supervisor meeting at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, but thanks to community television, those meetings are all recorded and put up both on the website of the Santa Cruz County Supervisors, and also another really great resource is community television itself, a site called Government on Demand. Again, my name is Becky Steinbruner. I'm very honored to be your host here this afternoon. Today we're going to have a mixture of guests, and I hope it will include you. I urge people to call in and become part of the program by talking with us and the guest and talking about what's going on. The voice of the people is a powerful thing. My first guest this hour will be Mr. Ryan McCauley from MidPeninsula Regional Open Space District. It's going to be a short interview that will be actually a primer to my guest from that same agency next week. His coworker, Mr. McCauley's coworker, named Cody, and he has a long name that I'm going to let Ryan help me pronounce for you when he comes online here. Next week, Cody will be talking about how the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space Preserve was able to successfully remove eucalyptus in the Sierra Azul Preserve, which is one of the many pieces of land that the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District owns, and to reduce fire risk. And that's a big topic here in Santa Cruz. The Santa Cruz County Grand Jury actually did an investigation on that and took a look at the eucalyptus around in the what's called the wildland urban interface zones of the county, notably the city of Santa Cruz. So that will be a great interview coming up here in a little bit. Mr. Ryan McCauley is going to, though, tell us about some of those great locations where we could go out for a good hike this weekend or whatever and see some wildflowers. It is beautiful out there, and we need to all get out and enjoy our beautiful community and the wild places and connect with nature and calm ourselves and connect with nature. So that'll be up in the first bit, and then after he finishes, I'll give a brief rundown of a few things that have happened here this week with the Board of Supervisors and other agencies. And then in the second hour, we're going to focus on the battery energy storage system known as BESS situation in the area. I keep bringing that back every program because nobody in local government is. And that is a tragedy, and I want to have it kept in the light because it is a disaster. And our county's response has been notably silent and, in my opinion, inadequate. So we'll have a couple of guests calling in, talking about a great event that I hope you will all attend next Monday, April 14th at 6:30 in the evening at the Watsonville Church of the Nazarene. That's at 701 Green Valley Road in Watsonville. The county supervisors have refused to call a town hall meeting. So we the people, are calling a town hall meeting with some excellent speakers. The Santa Cruz County Fire Marshal will be there talking about the project, the battery energy storage system BESS project that is currently in permitting process for 90 Minto Road off of Green Valley. And he'll be one of our speakers, Mr. Gabriel Medina, the trustee for the school district in that area. You may remember my talking about him last week with Sean Doherty, who was my guest in the second hour, talking about their event that was held last Saturday. Excellent event, by the way, at the London Nelson Center, talking about battery energy storage, fires, and how we cannot allow lithium in our community in these industrial purposes. So Gabriel Medina will be one of the speakers and others as well. And again, I urge you to listen in our second hour, learn more about that. I'm anticipating one of the callers to be a woman who, she and her family experienced the horrible fire at Moss Landing and what it has left them with in terms of health issues and trauma, and how it just gives credence to the fact that we cannot allow lithium battery energy storage systems in our county, and they should not be anywhere. We'll have some information from this Miss Nina Audino, who's organizing the group Stop Lithium BESS in Santa Cruz County, one of the main organizers of next Monday evening. Again, that's Monday, April 14th, 6:30, Watsonville Church of the Nazarene in Watsonville. She's a big organizer and just working her heart out because she sees and cares, and that is a great citizen model for us all. So while we're waiting for Mr. Ryan McCauley to call in, I will talk with you a little bit, just introducing the MidPeninsula Open Space Preserve. Now, you may not know about this, but there are some amazing lands that have been purchased by or donated to the MidPeninsula Regional Open Space District. It is primarily in San Mateo and Santa Clara County, but a little sliver of it is in Santa Cruz County. And we'll talk about that once Mr. McCauley gets in on the phone here. But I thought it would be a very fitting introduction to the more detailed talk we'll have next week with his coworker Cody about fire risk management and what is happening in the Sierra Azul Preserve, and to just get some information on where can we go hiking this weekend and see some beautiful wildflowers. Spring is really popping out there. Regarding the fire hazard areas, I want to point out that at the Central Fire District board meeting yesterday, they had maps of the local responsibility area fire hazard severity zones, and their board talked about it. You can find the map and what they had to say on their board agenda website for Central Fire Protection District in Santa Cruz County. And I see that our guest has just joined us. Let me see if we can bring on Mr. McCauley. Hello, Mr. McCauley, can you hear me?
Hi, Becky.
Hello, nice to hear you. Thank you. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh my goodness, it is my honor and pleasure to have you here today. May I call you Ryan?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. So, for my listeners, I've talked a little bit about you and that you're sort of a primer for our guest from the Mid Peninsula Open Space. Regional Open Space District next week, talking more
Mhm.
specifically about the eucalyptus and things like that. But I really want to thank you for agreeing to continue to be here as my guest today um, to introduce to our listeners what is, well, who are you? What do you do there? And what
Mhm.
is the Mid Peninsula Regional Open Space District?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And Becky, is it okay if I call you Becky?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really excited to be here and, happy Friday. Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, other than being a very long title, is we're a land management agency, primarily throughout the Santa Cruz Mountains region. We manage 27 open space preserves across 70,000 acres. 25 of those preserves are open and accessible to the public. Our preserves have over 250 miles of trails. All of our preserves are open 365 days a year for free. There's no charge, no parking fee, anything like that. Generally, about a half hour before sunrise to a half hour after sunset. So a lot of different opportunities to explore the greater Santa Cruz Mountains region. We're incredibly, lucky and fortunate to live in such a beautiful region full of
Yeah.
biodiversity, full of different native species that we can learn about and sort of educate ourselves about sort of this natural world. So, in a nutshell, Mid-Pen, we usually shorten it to Mid-Pen. We have a sort of a three-part mission. So our first is really to preserve this regional greenbelt of open space land. So preserve it in perpetuity, protect and restore the natural environment. So really trying to make sure the land is as healthy as possible because then, healthy land leads to healthier people and healthier humans, healthier wildlife, things like that. And then that third leg of our mission is really to provide opportunities for ecologically sensitive public enjoyment and education. So getting folks out on trails, getting folks, to connect with nature, learn more about what's out there and sort of get curious, get interested in learning about that natural world.
Mm-hmm. Wow, thank you. That's a big job and a big mission. And thank you for having the space available in such a densely populated area, especially. Um, how was the Mid Peninsula Regional Open Space District formed?
Yeah, so it's actually it's a great story. So in 1972, it was founded by really this sort of grassroots effort by a lot of sort of Palo Altans that had seen a lot of the foothills being developed,
Mm,
sort of in the Santa Cruz Mountains. The development was going up and up into the hills, and a lot of that sort of natural open space that these folks had grown up with, had gotten used to, had run out as kids and enjoyed, was getting threatened. And so it's really this sort of grassroots movement, and it sounds a little corny, but it's these people that sort of got together. They saw an issue that they cared about passionately. They had these evening meetings where they would all come together and think about how can we make sure we preserve these open spaces that we cherish so much, for the next generation and generations to come. So, I want to specifically name one of our founders, Nanette Hanko, who really spearheaded this this initiative. We are a public agency. Um, our board, we have 7 board members. They're all elected by the public, but
mm.
she was the one back in 1972 to really spearhead this initiative and get it on the ballot and make Mid-Penn what it is today.
Ah, so the
We were
voters,
inspired. Oh,
yeah, so the voters initiated the formation of the district.
yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
Um, Mid-Penn is in charge of sort of managing and stewarding these lands, but really, Mid-Penn isn't the owner. These are the public's lands. So
Mm,
these lands that we cherish, these open spaces, they really, belong to the people.
Thank you. And preserving them, different places have done different things. Here in Santa Cruz County, we created the Urban Services Line at about that same time, and Measure J that really limited growth and drew the line where you could and couldn't do dense development. So forming an open space district was what happened did it start in Santa Clara County? It's primarily in Santa Clara and San Mateo County, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. So it started out in Santa Clara County, but then after a few years sort of expanded into San Mateo County. So we're a little bit, we have a bit of a interesting boundary. We're a little bit in San Mateo County, a little bit in Santa Clara County, and then a little bit in Santa Cruz County as well.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our furthest south preserves are sort of in the Los Gatos region. Sierra Azul Open Space Preserve, which includes Mount Umunum, which is a great destination, as well as Bear Creek Redwoods are down in our Los Gatos, probably closest to Santa Cruz, and a little bit of those preserves touch into Santa Cruz County.
That's a great story, then, and it's continuing on. And you said that some of the preserves are accessible, some are not.
Yeah, that's correct. So MidPen actually, as we were expanding and growing, we included the coast side, so San Mateo coast side, and as a lot of the listeners are aware, I'm sure there's a long history of agricultural uses and ranching and grazing out there. So two of our preserves out on the coast side are actually closed to the public, but do have a lot of grazing and ranching operations. There are plans to open up some publicly accessible trails, but for right now, they're sort of these conservation management units, what we call them, but have a lot of ecological value. And grazing, we have a program of conservation grazing that uses cattle to sort of, chew down the grasses and help that regrowth.
Mm-hmm. And does the district own the cattle, or do you lease it out to ranchers?
Yeah, we lease it out to ranchers. So we have a number of private ranchers that we do business with. A lot of them are sort of generational farmers and grazers out on the coast side.
You're making me think of Point Reyes. That's kind of an issue up there right now with ranchers and preservation and all of that. That's not part of your district that you work for, though, is it?
That is not. No, I believe that's a national park.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Well, thank you. And how, other than cattle chewing things, how are these lands maintained?
Yeah, so one major priority for MidPen, is this reality of wildfire risk, right?
Yeah.
So, earlier this year we saw these incredibly destructive wildfires that happened in Southern California, and so, we know that fire is sort of this natural part of California ecology. Long before colonization, indigenous peoples practiced tribal burns, cultural burns that would remove excess dried and low to the ground vegetation. And so a lot of work that we do now to sort of manage those lands is in line with a lot of that. So we'll remove some of the underbrush, we'll limb up some of the trees. So if a wildfire does break out, it's less likely to sort of go up and become a canopy fire. And so it's, we do a lot of defensible spaces, a lot of fuel break work. And I know my colleague Cody will be on next week, who can really get into the details. But a lot of what we do, right, is sort of trying to best prepare how we would fight a fire, how we would work with CAL FIRE, all of these other agencies that are all sort of collaborating together.
That's great. That is great. And do local fire agencies help you with the burning as part of their training, or do you use some of the tribal burn crews to help do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a few years ago, we actually passed or we adopted what's called our Wildland Fire Resilience Program. And that was this sort of sweeping program that looked at all of our lands and how do we best prepare it for to make the land as resilient to wildfires as possible. There's again, I mentioned sort of this background and history of cultural burns, and then you know, as soon as colonization happened, there was a long-standing policy of no fires and sort of
Mm-hmm.
fire suppression at every point, and that really led to this buildup of biomass. So,
Mm-hmm.
what this program does is, yeah, it's working with a lot of those fire agencies, Cal Fire, to make sure we're doing this, and in an ecologically sensitive way too.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine. If you and this is a very extreme example, but if you cut everything down and you don't have any sort of nature, the wildfire risk is zero. But that's not what we want to do.
No,
We
we
want
c-
to make sure the land is as resilient as possible, but we're
we
also
we could
making
pave it,
sure all
and
of our
then
native.
then it would all be accessible too. We're
Exactly, right?
jesting here, aren't we?
Um,
Yes.
but yeah, and so I think, we want to make sure we're doing this work in a way that
Yeah.
that benefits native plant species, benefits native wildlife. And so, it sort of creates this ecosystem of resilience.
Yeah. And, as you said, many plants, many habitat ecosystems have been um, have a dependency on fire coming through once in a while. So it really does
Mhm.
nourish the land and reduce the fire risk at the same time, and makes for great wildflowers the next year. So
Absolutely.
where are the wildflowers happening now? That's going to perk up the ears of my hiking audience right
Yeah,
now, I'll tell you.
absolutely. I think we're right at sort of the beginning of what we're seeing as sort of this peak wildflower bloom season.
Mm,
I mentioned earlier we are incredibly lucky to be in this hotspot of biodiversity. Um,
yeah.
we have so many endemic species found nowhere else except for California and the Bay Area in particular. So, I always like to say spring is sort of the peak of wildflower season of when people want to get out there. But because of that biodiversity, we do have wildflowers bloom sort of throughout the year. So before I get into it, I do want to encourage folks to really get out there throughout the year and see what's in bloom.
Yeah.
We have winter blooms, we have fall as well.
Oh.
But a lot of our, grassy hillside preserves are especially popular for wildflower enthusiasts. One of our preserves down in Los Gatos, St. Joseph's Hill, is an excellent wildflower spot. One of my
Hmm.
favorite things to do is sort of drive and park in downtown Los Gatos, take the Los Gatos Creek Trail to St. Joseph's Hill, do a nice hike, look at some beautiful wildflowers, and then hike back and have lunch or
Mm.
what have you. That's an excellent option. Another great great recommendation is our Skyline Ridge Open Space Preserve, and that's up sort of Highway 35, kind of Skyline Boulevard up in the Santa Cruz Mountain. That's got a
Mm.
lot of great grassy trails. Um, for folks to see wildflowers as well. A lot of poppies out right now.
Mm.
Lupins are in bloom. But even some of our redwood preserves, again, that biodiversity, you can see some trilliums. You can
Mm.
see redwood sorrel, Johnny jump ups, things like that really, kind of open your eyes and think about the different variety of wildflowers you might be able to see.
Hmm. That all sounds beautiful. How do we find out where these places are and how to get there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So certainly our website, openspace.org, openspace.org/wildflowers. That's a great resource. It lists
Mm.
a lot of our preserves and specific trails that folks might want to visit. Included in that page too is some guidance for visitors too. I think folks getting out there, they're really excited and they want to run out into the field and grab that perfect photo. But we really want folks, especially during wildflower season, to stay on trails.
Yeah.
Make sure, you're only taking photos of flowers. You're not taking the flowers themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Really think about this larger landscape. Every time we're we're out in the preserves, we're out in nature, we're entering somebody's home, and
Yeah.
it's not it's usually a winged creature or a four-legged friend, right? So
Mm-hmm.
these flowers, while they're beautiful and so aesthetically pleasing, they're important food sources for pollinators such as bumblebees, butterflies, even moths. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're walking over, going off trail, trampling 3 or 4 flowers to get your perfect shot, that's something that really has this negative impact and can lead to a worse bloom the following year.
Mm-hmm. And makes you, the hiker, more prone to getting ticks. I'll say
Absolutely.
that.
Definitely something you want to avoid.
Yeah, indeed.
But there's also a couple cool tools out there that really, doing a little bit of research before. One tool that we usually recommend is called iNaturalist. And this is a
Ah,
really great site where you can sort of filter different species about what you can see out there. So you can sort of filter it to plant species within April, May timeframe in specific areas and sort of see what's in bloom.
ah.
You can also do that with wildlife species as well. And then MidPen, we actually came out with a tool last year called our Trail Explorer tool. And this is a really great tool as well. It's sort of a web-based application, but it um, it has all of our trails and sort of this interactive map feature that shows sort of the steepness or the shade cover, the sun exposure. So,
Oh,
maybe
nice.
you're looking for a hike that you can do with your dog that's relatively shady and relatively low slope.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of tailor it to exactly how you want to spend your time out there, which is a really helpful tool that was actually inspired by some visitor feedback.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And people need to be responsible to bring their own water, or is there water available at any places on these trails or the trailheads?
Yeah, so for the most part, we don't have water fountains. Most of our preserves, the trailheads, they will have a vault toilet,
Mm-hmm.
but it's very much a pack in, pack out. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have lunch, make sure you pack out any of the trash, things like that. We generally don't have water fountains. We do. I mentioned our Skyline Ridge Preserve. We do have a nature center there that opened for the season last
Oh,
weekend, so it's
oh.
only open on the weekends.
Mm.
But there is a water fountain there as well. But the Nature Center, the Daniels Nature Center, is a great option for families and kids looking to learn a little bit more. There's this touch table, different sort of animal skeletons, different pelts and furs that they can feel and really learn about.
Uh-huh. Can you give us the name of that nature center again and which preserve it's associated with?
Yeah, it's called the Daniels. I believe it's the David Daniels Nature Center, and that's in our Skyline Ridge Open Space Preserve.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's along Highway 35 area, you said?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a map. I copied a few pages out of the district's 2014 Vision Plan Summary. That's a great document,
Mm.
by the way. It's very informative, and it has some great maps of all of the preserves that the district owns. And I had no idea that that the district has all of this available for the people to go out and enjoy for free.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
really
And that
nice.
vision document, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that vision document really sort of outlines the future of the projects that MidPen is looking to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
We were fortunate back in about 10 years ago, we had what's called Measure AA, and it's this 30-year bond measure, but really increased the capacity of what MidPen could accomplish. So a lot of these larger scale projects that we've been able to do recently. So I mentioned sort of Mount Umunhum Summit, restoring the summit of Mount Umunhum, cleaning up all of the toxic residue that was left over when the Air Force was up there,
Wow.
being able to work with the Amamutsan tribal band to create a ceremonial circle and have a cultural easement. that was all due in part to Measure AA and that funding. I also mentioned Bear Creek Redwoods. We were able to open up that preserve for public access through Measure AA funds as well. So really thankful to the voters who, allowed that. And, it's not just for the folks within our exact footprint region, but sort of regionally. It's created a lot of interest and sort of visitation opportunities.
Mm-hmm. I read a bit about Measure AA. It was a $300 million bond issue to fund these capital projects. And that's really a great way to get the money that you need. How else is the district funded to do these projects and pay you? Hopefully you're getting paid. I hope your good work.
I am. Yeah. I'm very fortunate. MidPen is so in addition to Measure AA, we do receive, and I'm not sure the exact percentage, I'd have to talk to our CFO, but a little bit of property tax from the residences within the district boundaries. We also have a wonderful grants department, that's looking for opportunities, whether it's through the state or sort of other granting agencies that help fund projects specific that we work to complete.
Yeah, that's a big job, a very important one. Not only applying for them, but managing them. It's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Recently in Santa Cruz County, there was Measure Q that did pass, and also I think Prop 4 statewide money coming in. Is MidPeninsula Regional Open Space District planning to apply for any of those monies? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I think we're definitely looking at it. I think Prop 4 particularly, the big climate bond that was passed by voters last November, that has a lot of opportunities and sort of overlap with what MidPen does. One thing I think in particular we're really excited for and hopeful for the opportunity is wildlife crossing funds. So one of our biggest projects that we've been working on right now is a wildlife crossing across Highway 17. So right sort of south of downtown Los Gatos is unfortunately this vehicle wildlife collision hotspot. And we've been able to determine that through, working with CHP and sort of roadkill data, but also we've worked with the Santa Cruz Puma Project, which is out of UC Santa Cruz. Oh, are you familiar with it?
Yes, actually, Chris. I can't remember his last name. Yes, he came and talked with my community about some projects they were working on. I live in the Santa Cruz Mountains, so anyway, Go ahead. So they've given you information about the siting of this overcross.
Yeah, and so this, we've been able to use sort of GPS data to find out this is a specific hotspot right along Trout Creek. And so what we're working on right now with Caltrans and with VTA is this wildlife undercrossing. So the wildlife would go underneath the freeway to access from the Santa Cruz Mountains sort of towards the east. And then we're working in tandem with a trail overcrossing. So pedestrians, bikers, potentially equestrians would be able to access, Lexington County Park and St. Joseph's Hill Open Space Preserve on the east side to our El Sereno Open Space Preserve on the west side. And so really, we passed a major hurdle last year, sort of clearing the environmental review. And so now looking to make sure that we can secure the funds to get this project built because, it's going to connect over 30,000 acres of publicly protected, of protected open space lands that really helps, particularly mountain lions, which are keystone species, but also deer and other wildlife that might find their way on the freeway. And so in addition to, helping out wildlife, of course, accidents and hitting wildlife on the roadways is also incredibly dangerous and expensive for commuters and drivers alike.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's a very exciting project. I wasn't aware of that one. I know the Land Trust of Santa Cruz County built one further up in the mountains on Highway 17, but this one is a second one to help the wildlife and also incorporate a pedestrian, equestrian overcrossing. That will be really nice. When might we see that start up in construction?
Yeah, so again, depending on if we're able to secure funding and, anybody
Mm-hmm.
that's interested in it,
Mm-hmm.
encourage you to reach out to your local legislators and
Ah,
advocate for funding for wildlife crossing projects like this.
mm-hmm.
We're hoping to start construction in 2027.
Oh, good. And that's going to be
Yeah.
contingent upon Prop 4 funding that you're applying for, and
Potential, yeah.
yeah.
Prop 4 funds would be part of it. Some potential other sources as well. There are a few federal grants that are available that we would qualify for, but hard to count on.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, this is all very wonderful news, Ryan, and in addition to all these beautiful wildflower vistas that we should all be getting out and enjoying right now, but throughout the year, as you
Yeah.
pointed out, there's a lot to offer here. Tell us and the
Mhm.
listeners one more time how we can learn more about um, the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District and get information on these wonderful opportunities, both hiking and funding.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So again, our website, openspace.org, there you can find a list of all of our preserves, all of our different trails and sort of activities. We do have an amazing team of volunteers, of docent naturalists who lead free guided hikes.
Oh,
So folks that are maybe interested in getting sort of a guided tour, learning about some of those native species out there, getting this really in-depth learning experience while being able to spend time out in nature. I definitely encourage folks to look for those. That's under our events and activities section.
great.
Um, yeah, so of course, follow us on social media, sign up for our newsletter. Those are where we sort of publicize all those opportunities as well.
That's marvelous. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon to help us all learn more about the the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District and all of the wonderful trails and beautiful lands that are available to everyone for free to go out and enjoy. And we certainly all need to go out and do that all the time, but especially now in the spring and when
Mm.
times are so stressful to many people.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much growing research too about just, spending time out in nature,
yeah,
really improving your mental health, reducing anxiety, um, you know, helping those sometimes feelings of isolation or loneliness, really getting in touch and feeling connected with nature,
yeah,
has so many benefits in addition to sort of the exercise, of course, and physical benefits. Really, those mental health benefits, are huge. So encourage
yes,
everybody to, yeah, get out there when they can.
indeed. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the listeners before I let you go back to your busy day?
I think we covered a lot. Again, I just encourage folks to be respectful out there, get curious. As much as you can, learn. When you're out there, it's not necessarily just, it's not all about us, right? It's not all about
Yeah,
us humans, but really protecting these spaces for all of our wildlife and all of our plant species, because those healthy lands, caring for the land really helps us take care of us. And even if you don't use the land, it's still creating fresh oxygen, it's cleaning water, so a lot of
mm-hmm,
benefits.
mm-hmm.
I would also encourage, some of our preserves do get pretty busy on the weekends. Our Bear Creek Redwoods Preserve does get full. The parking lot gets full on the weekend. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever possible, usually between like 8 and 11, that's when it gets full. If possible, try to go sort of off peak hours, maybe later in the afternoon on the weekends or on the evening. On weekdays, we're usually pretty available. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
want to invite folks to discover.
Excellent. Thank you. Give us your website one more time, just so people make sure to have it correctly.
Absolutely. So it's openspace.org.
Okay, that's easy to remember and a beautiful way to end our interview now. Ryan McCauley, thank you very much for sharing your time today and these good wildflower spots. We'll go check them out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You as well. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. So, there we have it. Get out, enjoy the flowers, enjoy the woods, enjoy the fresh air, and take a deep breath and enjoy where we live. We're lucky to be here in the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space Preserve, primarily over in the San Mateo, Santa Clara County area. A little bit in Santa Cruz County, though, is there for everyone to enjoy. And I really wanted to have Ryan explain a little bit for us the nuts and bolts, if you will, of the district, so that next week his coworker, Cody, who will be talking more about the maintenance of the Sierra Azul Preserve, that's near Lexington Reservoir. They did a project removing eucalyptus, and it was to reduce fire hazard. I want to thank Michael Olson for arranging me to meet with Ryan, and Ryan's help in determining that his coworker Cody will be a really good guest for us next week, and that's going to be the second hour, the 3:00 hour. So, without further ado, I want to thank you, listeners. This is Becky Steinbruner, your host here on Community Matters. I hope you'll stay tuned. I'm going to, in our second hour, we'll have discussion about the Moss Landing fire, the battery fire, a great event coming up next Monday, April 14th, 6:30, at the Watsonville Church of the Nazarene, to help people learn more about the battery energy storage systems, the projects that the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors are very quickly shoving through in our neighborhoods. 3 locations, one on 90 Minto Road, is already in permitting process, and people who live next to it don't even know. The supervisors have refused to hold town hall meetings. Supervisor Felipe Hernandez, whose district this 90 Minto Road project is in, has said he does not intend to hold any town hall meetings until after the Board of Supervisors has approved the ordinance that will allow it. So the people are taking things in their own hands, our own hands, and we're creating this event ourselves for you, for the community, and we have some great speakers, including the county fire marshal. That's going to be my guest in this, not the fire marshal, but he'll be a speaker Monday night. Again, that's Monday, 6:30 at the Watsonville Church of the Nazarene. And in the second hour here on Community Matters, I'll be joined with Ms. Nina Audino from Stop Lithium BESS in Santa Cruz County. And you, if you want to call in and get more information, as well as I'm hoping a woman named Liza will phone in, who has been very adversely affected by the Moss Landing fire. She lived on her fishing boat with her family in the Moss Landing Harbor, and I hope you'll stay tuned and listen to what she has to say. Now, in the last few minutes here, we've got about 10 minutes before the top of the hour break. You feel free to call in if you'd like. The number to call is 831-265-5050 if you'd like to call in about the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, wildflower hikes you know of that people ought to go check out, anything that you'd like to talk about. Please call in 265-5050. I want to talk a little bit about something that happened at the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisor meeting Tuesday. I did attend, and was I wanted to try to get the ear of 2nd District County Supervisor Kim DeSerpa. She's new. She took over for Supervisor Zach Friend, and she has experience as being a trustee of the Pajaro Valley Unified School District for many years, and has a special interest in health and different things like that. She is a social worker and has worked in that industry for many years. I appreciate her. I appreciate that she is new and there's a lot to learn. But what I was trying to get her ear about, both before the meeting in writing and at the meeting, and got no traction at all, no acknowledgement at all, is the fact that she has appointed vice president or former vice president of Barry Swenson Builder, a man named Jesse Nickell, to represent the 2nd District on the County Planning Commission. Now, the County Planning Commission is a very powerful commission. Projects, sizable projects, controversial projects, this ordinance that the supervisors will ultimately approve regarding battery energy storage projects, those all go through the Planning Commission. It is a very powerful commission. And I've attended many of their meetings. You can listen to their recordings if you go to the Santa Cruz County Planning Department. It's a combined department now called CDI, Community Development and Infrastructure. They combine public works with planning, but the two departments basically still function separately. The Planning Commission website is there, and you can look for their past meetings. They are really the group that authorizes what or recommends to the Board of Supervisors what should happen. And they are dictated to some extent by the county administrative officer, Mr. Carlos Palacios, who controls the purse strings, as well as Santa Cruz County planning staff. They used to have a really good commissioner on there named Michael Guth. He was my favorite because he is a patent attorney. He knows how to read complex documents and is not afraid to do so, and was not afraid to stand up and say, no, this doesn't fit code, or, well, let's look at this. And I haven't seen that in the Planning Commission since he was kicked off by Supervisor Manu Koenig and replaced by initially Tim Gordon, who is the leader of a large developer called Workbench. Now, maybe you know that name, Workbench. That is the one that proposed the town clock project in Santa Cruz City and is doing some very aggressive projects in Scotts Valley, circumnavigating the local jurisdiction with under a legislative ability to get, again, permission to convert industrial land to very dense housing, which is not bad, but why do you feel the need to circumvent the local jurisdiction? So, Workbench. But Tim Gordon resigned, and I am happy that Manu Koenig replaced him with a contractor and an architect who have boots on the ground understanding of the permitting process and all that. But what 2nd District County Supervisor Kim DeSerpa has done is put a very large controversial developer in the shoes for the 2nd District, Jesse Nickell. I spoke before the board and pleaded with her to reconsider because I know Jesse Nickell as being in charge of the Aptos Village project. I know Jesse Nickell as being the one who authorized Barry Swenson Builder subcontractor to haul out, to excavate a tank buried in the ground in an area of the Aptos village area, and it leaked toxic, hazardous, foul-smelling stuff, and they dug a trench and then hauled out the tank in the night and filled over the trench. The only way that I saw that happen, and I saw where it happened, and the only way it was discovered and dealt with by the county, even though people called it in, was that the county's grading inspector was out there and noted that the air reeked of diesel. That's not the only reason. County Environmental Health went out and looked and was told by Barry Swenson builder, and this is all under Jesse Nickell, that the tank was in location A, which was far away from where it actually was taken out of the ground. And when that was excavated, they did find evidence of a toxic plume that had traveled through the soil, even though it was hundreds of feet away from the actual site. And even though the residents of the area tried to point out to the county that that's not the place, nothing happened. The only thing that did happen was that the county district attorney sort of gave a slap on the wrist fine of $127,000, and that was it. So that's the Jesse Nickell I know. And the Jesse Nickell I know is the one that bulldozed the world-famous post office bike jumps at a time early in the project when they had no building permits and they had no winter grading permits, both of which would have stopped, should have stopped any grading at all. But he did that. So that's the Jesse Nickell I know. And now Kim DeSerpa has said, well, he knows how hard it is to get building permits, so that's why I appointed him. Afterwards, in the hallway, I tried to talk with her and said, he doesn't know. He's a large developer. Barry Swenson builder got lots and lots of concessions with the county to build the Aptos Village project. And she just dismissed the whole thing. So that's what we have, and I want to encourage you to quiz Supervisor DeSerpa on the wisdom of appointing a Barry Swenson builder, Vice President Jesse Nickell, to represent and call the shots on development in Santa Cruz County. You're listening to Community Matters. My name is Becky Steinbruner, and I hope you'll stay tuned for the second hour. We'll be talking about battery energy storage and an event coming up next week. In the little bit of time I have, I want to also point out to you, I'll have a guest coming on in the near future talking about the Redmond Hirahara House in Watsonville and how the Santa Cruz County Historic Resources Commissioners voted to help take that off the National Historic Registry, even offering $600 of their own budget fund to do so that it can be bulldozed, demolished, and developed into a strip mall called the Gateway Project for the city of Watsonville. It's county jurisdiction at this point, but the city of Watsonville has their eyes on it in their 2050 general plan expansion. And we'll hear more about that in the weeks to come. But that will be coming before the County Board of Supervisors to delist the Redmond Hirahara House in early May. And you can stay tuned to listen to that in a later project. Stay tuned, come back, and join me in the second hour. Thank you. Welcome back to Community Matters. I'm your host, Becky Steinbrunner, for the next hour, and thank you for joining me here on Community Matters, SantaCruzVoice.com. We are, and aim to be, the voice for the local community, bringing you information about what's going on in our community and giving you the opportunity to be involved if you want to, as much as you can, just to make your voice heard. This is Community Matters because it certainly does. It's my opinion that the people are very powerful when we get together and voice our thoughts. So, our second hour here will be focused on the battery energy storage system, known as BESS, acronym, that is happening in Santa Cruz County. Certainly what happened at Moss Landing with the fire that began January 16th and burned for days, sending a plume of smoke into Santa Cruz County as well as in Monterey County. The smoke did not stop at the county line. And it has bothered me a lot that none of the Santa Cruz County leaders, with the exception of Supervisor Manu Koenig, who did try initially January 28th when the supervisors received their first and only report about the Vistra, Moss Landing Vistra battery fire. He tried to push back the date that our county would be reviewing the ordinance to allow that technology for sites in Santa Cruz County, and got no support at all from the other supervisors. That's what was shocking to me. And he had to fight with the others to get staff of the county to go out and sample water and soil in the Pajaro area to determine if there were heavy metals there from the smoke of the Moss Landing fire. That was shocking to me. Those results have since come out. There's not much information publicly available about how the samples were taken, exactly where they were taken. Were the soil samples on from a deep layer of soil, or were they the top 1 to 2 millimeters of the soil where such residue would be expected to be found? That's what Dr. Ivano Aiello did at Moss Landing Marine Lab when they did their studies and sampling right after the fire. And it was found that the levels of heavy metals were thousands of times higher than what they had been, having the benefit of gone to those same sites for sampling for a different purpose for a decade. So they had the baseline information. That information comported with the citizen science work that Never Again Moss Landing funded out of their own pockets, the people, and found similar results, that the plume traveled over Watsonville and then went down into Prunedale and those areas, and they found very high levels of heavy metals in the dust. And that has adversely affected the health of many people, some people here in Santa Cruz. But there's no survey available for Santa Cruz. There was for a while a survey available on Monterey County's website that included a survey for Santa Cruz County residents. How can that make any sense at all to do something like that? But that's what happened. And I pointed that out to Supervisor Koenig, and he seemed basically uninterested and unwilling to do anything again, because when he tried on January 28th, he got no support from the rest of the board. That's the political side of Supervisor Manu Koenig. So none of the board members are willing to even have this issue returned to the agenda for regular reports, even though people keep asking for that. That's what they did in the CZU fire, after all. They had reports, updates every time. And when I've asked for that, the reply is, well, it was a Monterey County event, not Santa Cruz County. But as I've said, the smoke carrying heavy metals, nickel, manganese, cobalt, lithium, it did not stop at the county border. And so why should we ever think that it is not a Santa Cruz County problem too? So that's what we're going to be talking about here in the second hour. And as soon as my guests call in, we'll get them on the line. The number to call, you can call too, and be my guest, is 265-5050. And I'm waiting for a call from Miss Nina Audino, the organizer with her husband Greg of Stop Lithium BESS in Santa Cruz County. And there are other groups too, other groups that have formed and are working for the same good, but doing it with a slightly different focus, a slightly different manner, but they're all working to try to get the attention of the supervisors and getting information out to the people, because Santa Cruz County leadership is silent. So I hope you'll come to the event that we have organized with the help, I say we, many people working together. There are signs that you may see, big yellow signs in the area that say, batteries are burning, and so are our rights. And that is the truth. The batteries are burning in Moss Landing, and our right to information about that, our right to say no to that in our neighborhood, is on fire too. And we as the people have to stand up, link arms, and demand that our leaders pay attention to us and call a moratorium on lithium battery energy storage systems. It is the lithium that is dangerous. As my guest last week, Mr. Sean Doherty, talked about, and it was a great event, April 5th, last Saturday at the London Nelson Center, where that was all discussed. And that was very well attended, I may add, very well attended. So people want information. The leaders are not giving it to them. So we will have this event Monday at the Watsonville Church of the Nazarene. That's at 7, I think it's 701, might be 710, but it's on Green Valley Road in Watsonville, 6:30, and everyone is invited. It's free. We'll have speakers. Mr. Santa Cruz County Santa Cruz County Fire Marshal Chris Walters will be there speaking. He's been involved in this from the get-go, representing the fire and the public safety aspect. And also we will have Gabriel Medina, who represents that area's Pajaro Valley Unified School District, and it's actually his caption that we borrowed: batteries are burning and so are our rights. He came up with that, and he is a very eloquent speaker, and will be speaking next Monday evening. We'll also have some people from Moss Landing. The fellow who works in the Moss Landing Harbor, George, will be talking. A person I'm hoping that will call in this afternoon named Liza, who lived on the boat with her family and experienced the horrific fire just in their lap and how it has affected their lives. She and her husband are expecting a child, and how that has affected them with the heavy metals and the stress, and not a government that is not transparent or responsive. So as soon as they call in, we'll get them on the line. And I'm hoping that they can call in. I always worry about this piece, but I'm not seeing anything. So hopefully they will call in. I was honored to speak at the Santa Cruz County Association of Realtors this last week. They were interested in this information too, because that affects property values. And it is incumbent upon them to disclose all known pieces of information on a property when they buy or sell it. And here is this information about the heavy metals from the smoke plume. They were very interested in that, although some didn't really want to know. But in preparing for that talk, it was a very short, I got 2 minutes there, but they were very kind and gave me a little extra. Many people are wondering, why is the County of Santa Cruz pushing this so hard? Why is the County of Santa Cruz pushing this so hard? And that begs an answer. I went back and looked in the October 29th, 2024 Board of Supervisors agenda when they approved in concept this ordinance. And I looked through they had it all ready to go there. And they've got the county code amendments all ready to go for this new ordinance. And in the strategic initiatives, this is page 77 of the October 29th Board of Supervisors agenda. It says, the proposed amendments are consistent with Strategy 6 of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan in support of achieving 100% clean energy by 2030. 2030. That's when this county has determined there will be no fossil fuel power used or purchased or sold in this county. So that is driven by 3CE, Central Coast Community Energy, and known as 3CE, which now garners 96% of the market, energy market rates, market in Santa Cruz County. And the Santa Cruz County Administrative Officer, Carlos Palacios, sits on that board, as does 5th District County Supervisor Monica Martinez. She stepped into the shoes to do that when Bruce McPherson was no longer on the board. But he's the one that pushed these through, and I say push them through. So we are honored to have a caller now. Liza, I'm going to see if I can get you on. Hello, Liza, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Thank you so much for calling in. Liza, would you please introduce yourself to our listeners and tell your story? What happened to you and your family, and how are you now?
So we have been living aboard in Moss Landing for what would be our 5th year, right across from the Moss Landing power plant, and watched the transition from natural gas to the battery storage facilities. But we had no idea that it was the largest battery storage facility in the world. Although over the last 5 years that I have lived there, as a live aboard, there have been fires every single year. Once a couple of years ago, we did receive a very late notification of an evacuation order, and by the time we received the orders, they had already, quenched the fire or relieved the orders. But just this past year in January, my kids were aboard on the boat, and we were en route back to the harbor when we could see that the flames were half the height of the towers. And it was absolutely terrifying for my family and for my kids, more so because I was panicking that I wasn't going to be able to get to the boat and my kids, it's because of closures. And as soon as we got there, we prepared to evacuate even before the orders were being made. Although, to their credit, the harbor in Moss Landing did start loud hailing, for people to evacuate.
Wow.
And so we immediately left, and, my photo has been circulated all over Santa Cruz. It's the image of, the towers, in, a huge flame in front of the towers with a beautiful great white egret at the edge of the water line.
Yes.
That's my image. And that was the last image that we took as we were leaving the boat and leaving the dock and piling into the car. It put us in a very compromised situation because, we had only one N95 mask in our possession that my fiance uses for work purposes, and I had two kids and myself. I was 5 months pregnant at the time, and deliberating who I was going to put the mask on, and I put it on my 8-year-old daughter because by the time we made it from the boat to the parking lot, you could start to smell, what I don't know how else to describe, but burning metal and burning plastics, and really immediate onset of headaches and stinging eyes, and just, we couldn't evacuate fast enough. We left the premise and had a safe location to go to in Pacific Grove, and while we were in Pacific Grove, you could see, the plume of the smoke and the flames, just, cascading across the bay, and, we stayed there overnight, and we heard the evacuation orders were lifted the next day. Even though we could still see that it was smoking. We did make a passage to head back because we had no clothes and no food, and the place that we were staying was a friend of ours who was out of town, and he had all of his utilities shut off. So we had to get dinner on the go and food on, clothes on the go, and we had hoped to return home, but they had closed the whole area. And even though they were letting only residents back into the area, before we even made it to the site of the towers, when we were in Marina, we could again smell, chemicals and this metal taste in our mouths, and our eyes were burning. And I told my daughters, I said, there's no way we're going back. I don't care what they say. It's not safe. We're not going back. And so we have been kind of on the run ever since, it feels like, because, it continued to smolder for over 30 days and then flared up again in February. And it added all these major concerns to my pregnancy and to the health of my kids who had respiratory distress and headaches and chest pain. And, we've just been constantly being monitored through various testing and, really speaking out against the dangers and the reality of this, unsafe, non-sustainable, non-renewable, situation with the battery storage. I mean, for 5 years they have rented that. Vistra has rented that facility, purchasing from Dynegy, and then, rolling over into their ownership under PG&E, and every year they have a fire. That's a 5 out of 5. That's 100% failure rate. Wow. And has, forced a lot of us to, consider relocation. And in our situation, we got so concerned about our health and so concerned about the escalating risk of our pregnancy that we have also been forced to, evacuate the area for longer term, and can't really project ourselves moving back, at least until a year or so, because there's still no containment, there's still no transparency, there's still no communication over how they're going to handle this. And every time, if you drive by Moss Landing, you can see this gaping hole in this, vintage concrete building that is also in question for arsenic and asbestos. And there's this gaping hole of rubble and debris. It looks like a war zone. And there's no appropriate fencing or skirting around the area. There's no signs that say, we're cleaning up today or anything. And every time the wind blows and the rain comes down, myself, my family, our neighbors, and other members of the community, get flare-ups of these sensations of the stinging eyes, and the tasting metal, and even put a cat and a dog on the boat and put their health at risk. I didn't think my cat would survive. She'd been coughing and gagging persistently since the first fire, and my dog's eyes had been bulging, bloodshot. And since we have moved into a remote location in the redwoods, my dog's eyes are clear. My cat is barely coughing. And for myself, what the real final decision to move was that I could not sleep through the night. I was coughing and gagging, sometimes to the point of vomiting every single night, sleepless night for months. And it caused me to, go to the hospital a couple of times because I was so concerned about the severity of my headaches and, the severity of my coughing and whether or not that was going to causing me to lose amniotic fluid or it did put my pregnancy into a high-risk category, lots of monitoring, and, we're infuriated. We've been participating in protests and we've been speaking out and tried to get Panetta's attention when he came to Cabrillo, and it seems like the general consensus is our local politicians have been paid off by Vistra as initial investors prior to their campaigns. They have agreements with them. They're not willing to admit the severity of the situation, despite the fact that our on-site resident scientists of our local, marine laboratory division of San Jose University confirmed immediately that we're talking about hundreds of thousands of parts per million of increase of heavy metals. And even if what they say is true, that the hydrofluoric acid, which is the biggest risk and a fatal risk, was, burning up during the heat and the pinnacle of these fires, they failed. Both times in January and February, they waited 3 hours, and by they, I mean the County of Monterey waited 3 hours to issue evacuation orders to our local residents and, on-site personnel. And during that time, those 3 hours where the EPA was not present and no air monitoring was present, this is when we're talking about those gases burning at their highest capacity. And for myself, on my vessel, I can see in areas of epoxy that there is chemical burns. We've been trapped below in the boat around a HEPA filter for months, just doing nothing but doctor's appointments and protests. I just really want this issue to continue to, I want people to be aware, because people outside the 10, 15-mile zone that didn't, personally experience seeing particulate, pepper their entire, property, they don't understand what it's like for the people who are living there, because heavy metal poisoning is a cumulative sort of thing. Yes. It's no different than, when they warn you about mercury in seafood, because, bigger fish eat smaller fish, and the longer you're exposed, the more sick you feel, the more sensitive you become. And they want not only to, not address, admitting how hazardous this is, but they also have, persisted in asking for, renewed permits, and are asking to build more of these things in our extended area of Monterey Bay, in our neighbors' backyards, in Aptos and Watsonville. And I'm just glad to see that I heard just recently that Morro Bay was able to, as a community, really reject Vistra so strongly after this incident that they've withdrawn their permitting there. And we really hope that if the community remains vocal enough and aware enough of how dangerous this is, then we will be able to push back Vistra to withdraw their permits as well.
Yes, indeed. And Vistra isn't the only one there, but they're perhaps the most egregious in just the violations and not reporting to the public officials or having a plan for what to do.
Well, Vistra didn't have a plan. PG&E did not have a plan. Yeah. Tesla did not have a plan. They've all experienced independent fires. So Tesla, to their credit, was the only one that made safety revisions to their storage. PG&E, as I understand it, and Vistra still have failed to submit a safety plan from the very beginning of their permitting, and after subsequent fires year after year, and currently date. There is still no safety plan. There's still no cleanup, plan, and it's something I keep echoing to our community who live in this Bay Area. we know that, if they're doing dredging at the harbor, they have to put up a notice saying, don't go in the water, because we're disturbing the silt and there might be heavy metals. If you pump gas at the gas station, there's a notice that says, please don't stay in this area for too long. You're exposing yourself to hazardous chemicals. And yet, any layman can do research online to see the dangerous, toxic, heavy metals and noxious gases that are emitting from lithium fires burning or smoldering or gassing off, and yet there is no acknowledgement whatsoever that this area is now in question and toxic and is dangerous, and it just blows my mind. You can't buy a Starbucks coffee without saying it might cause cancer, but you can go to Moss Landing anytime, and no one, not one of our legislators is really willing to stand up and say, hey, this stuff is really toxic, and we need to come up with a plan with this, on how to deal with our cleanup and our containment right now. Let's not even begin the conversation of where we're going with this until we can handle what we can't handle, which is, we haven't been able to stop the fires. We don't have a plan for hazardous materials. How did they get here? How did this happen?
Yeah. So this is a disaster. And what bothers me is that those who are in charge of handling disasters don't want to talk about it. They've got their head in the sand, or at least they're not telling us information. I'm very curious, Liza. You said you went to the hospital. What were they aware of that they needed to be connecting what you were experiencing with the fire? Were other people there for things too? I've heard mixed messages.
So again, some of the things I'm hearing from the community is it depends on who you go, where you go. I happened to go to Watsonville Hospital, closest to Moss Landing, and they were all very aware of the situation, and medically, they all did take it very seriously. They did say that other people had come in and complained about symptoms, and there are confounding variables during the wintertime, flu season and so forth. It seems kind of, they asked at my daughter's clinic, if she could be treated for allergies. She's never had allergies. But that, there is a bit of a medical dismissal, but then there's also this other level of medical personnel who are, very critical thinkers, who are aware of the dangers of heavy metals, and they are taking it very seriously, and they did take my complaints and concerns very seriously, and I do feel like I have received some of the best standards of care, primarily because I am so far along and pregnant. And what we do know about nanoparticulates, and when we do know about heavy metals, and what the medical community does understand about those things, is that the risks are high and they're dangerous and they're cumulative. But as far as, how a lot of our community is being treated, there is a general consensus among our healthcare community, which is we don't know what to do. We've never seen anything like this before. We have never dealt with anything of this magnitude before. We don't know what to test for or what to look for or what to compare against. And I think our medical community is just as confounded, as the people who experience symptoms are. They're frustrated because, they never received any notifications from Vistra or Monterey County that even though when they requested their permitting back in like 2019, 2020 or whatever it was, in their report for permitting, it says that there is a risk of fire. It says that in their permit request. And yet no one in our medical community was ever given any information on what to do or how to treat the community should unquenchable lithium ion battery fire, happen. And this is something that our medical community should be, aware of, because, we have these electric cars driving all over the place, and just one electric car catching fire, poses, serious, if not fatal, health risks to people within the proximity that can smell it. Just one battery in one car, because they can't put that battery out either. If you have a scooter in your house and it has a lithium-ion battery and it lights on fire, you better get out of there quick, because the amount of, toxins that are being released are fatal to you on a battery scooter. And so our medical community should have information on how to at least address this issue, because it's going to be part of our reality now. And it seems like that, along with this term, greenwashing, not even including, the health implications of mining these chemicals and these minerals and stuff, which we're seeing health complications arise from the mining process for those communities, and water being, poisoned in those communities. It's just mind-boggling that our healthcare community doesn't have a plan for this.
Yeah.
There's this streamlining of so-called green energy. That's really what it boils down to, is our energy commissions have a special pass to not abide by other regulations and expedite their agendas to have these installations of so-called green energy or so-called carbon reduction net zero agenda. And their entire technology is experimental. Mm-hmm. And it's experimental on people, on agriculture, on our bay, on our water systems, and they know it. And the irony is, of all the fires in California, they all seem to come down to energy issues with PG&E, issues with lithium batteries. We're talking about, fires erupting all the time in California related to, our energy commissions, and yet they're the ones that don't have to pass any special permitting. They can basically just streamline as long as they shake hands with politicians and they, politicians agree to get paid to sign on with their, plan to move forward, and they call it net zero. But in fact, Vistra, if you look them up on, Wikipedia, as of 2020, before this fire, they were already listed as the top 10 CO2 emitter in the United States.
Wow.
So it's not green. There's nothing about it that's green, from mining to installation to infrastructure. There's nothing about it that is reducing carbon emissions. It's instead doing completely the opposite, and it's putting people at risk. And it's just, just infuriating that they want to continue to build them, they want to restock them, they want to expedite this permitting, and that our energy commissions are allowed these special privileges when mom and pop can't build a deck in their backyard if they live near the ocean.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you're right. Can I ask, did the Watsonville Hospital give you any indication that they were collecting the data on people like you and others coming in, and that they were going to do anything with that data to report it to anyone?
They didn't indicate any of that to me. The nurses that I saw that time, were visiting nurses, and, they have said that they see things like this before, but again, they also seem to understand that our politicians don't care. There's no indication that there is reporting of these incidences being done or required, by our medical community. All we can do, as citizens, is be sure that if you're experiencing symptoms, that you report them and that you keep a medical record of, what's happening to you, because the things that are really scary about this stuff is, it's scary in the short term, but it's way scarier in the long term. And these are the kind of things that we really won't know what damages it's kind of like, for lack of better analogy, Agent Orange. Mm-hmm. We know that pretty much everyone from Vietnam who was a veteran has died before 66 or suffered severe life-threatening cancer and by miracle survived. And we didn't know that until, they became mature adults and all had the same symptoms and the same throat cancer, and it all boiled down to the same exposure of Agent Orange. And here we are, all getting exposed to these lithium battery fires, and we won't know until down the line how many years this may have taken off our lives.
Yeah. Liza, you are going to be a speaker at an event coming up April 14th. I've got a caller on the line, Nina Audino. Can you stay on and join her to talk a little bit about that event Monday and what people need to be doing now not only for what happened in Moss Landing, but for what the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors wants to put in Santa Cruz County. Can you stay with us in the conversation?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much. Liza, thank you for calling in. I'm very troubled by what you're saying. I'm going to bring on Nina Audino now from Stop Lithium BESS in Santa Cruz County. Nina, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. And thank you for holding. Nina Audino, why don't you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what's happening next Monday night in Watsonville?
Okay. Very briefly, my husband, Greg, and I, in late January, maybe 8 or so days after the toxic battery fire broke out at Vistra's Moss Landing BESS, we started a grassroots resident group. We called it Stop Lithium BESS in Santa Cruz County. We built a Facebook page for it. It's growing steadily. There's 150 people on it now. And we joined other groups that also formed. There is a lot of concern about this countywide. And so we have been slowly building up to a public meeting. We're going to hold that public meeting Monday, April 14th in the evening from 6:30 to 8:30 at the Watsonville Church of the Nazarene at 710 Green Valley Road. And we're inviting people to speak. So we are going to have residents like you, Liza, who experience firsthand on your own skin, so to speak, unfortunately, what happens after exposure to these toxic battery fires. And then we've also invited organic farm leaders, representatives to speak. We're hoping they come. And then we also have the county fire marshal, Chris Walters, is going to speak, and Gabrielle Medina, the Bajo Valley Unified School District Board trustee. So we have speakers who can talk about this extremely critical issue for our county and pretty much for everyone globally. These energy storage facilities are going in everywhere. So hopefully this meeting will give an opportunity for many people in our community to gain a better understanding of what this is, what the battery energy storage facility is, and how it works, and its risks. It's very real and dangerous risks. And then, so hopefully there'll be an opportunity for question and answer. I'm really looking forward to that. I did want to say that I'm trying to plug this so that people feel like they're not alone. So my husband and I have become representatives for Santa Cruz County in a coalition of 10 counties that have joined together. They're calling themselves Californians for Safe Energy Storage, and the coalition is advocating very strongly for a moratorium, essentially, not just in one county, but for a moratorium essentially statewide to pause this and to slow it down, and to take a hard look at the risks and the dangers of using lithium in particular amidst residential communities, near hospitals and schools, on agricultural land, near water, near the ocean. The list just goes on and on. It's a train wreck for communities and for the environment around us. I also wanted to read from one of these counties' websites, and it's a good synopsis, and it kind of, Liza, it echoes what you're saying, and I just kind of want to reiterate that. It says the battery energy storage industry is brand new and growing quickly. There is little in the way of land use regulations around the country, not just our county or Monterey County or Merced or San Benito. It's USA wide. So there's little in the way of land use regulations around the country that might properly mitigate the risk for communities. Counties and cities have been caught off guard and lack the knowledge, staff expertise, and time to assess these projects adequately and objectively. I'm reminded of the council in Watsonville saying, wait, we had no idea about the plans for a 200 megawatt BESS facility going in at the end of Minto Road. And then it continues and it says the industry has exploited this deficit and aggressively downplayed the risks, minimizing concerns by using jargon and misleading statistics and employing industry-friendly consultants who essentially wield their expertise as a tool to get projects quickly approved without pushback. It's time for us to stop, to take a breath, and objectively review the risks involved in these installations. That will enable decisions that are based not on the profit motive of an ambitious industry, but on independent facts, scientific facts on science, not an industry pitch, right? And also on stakeholder input and review by all those who will be impacted by these types of projects. So I read that and I thought that is a really good synopsis of the crossroads that we're at right now. So I don't know if you have other questions, Becky, or if you think I should add something to this. I mean, I can speak quickly about the existing plans that New Leaf Energy has submitted to the county and, 3 or 4 of the glaring, very dangerous omissions.
Let's give Liza a chance to respond to what you've just said, Nina. Liza, do you have any thoughts on what Nina just read, and what would you have to say?
Well, I think that, the way that technology has evolved so rapidly and, there are a lot of really amazing, progressive things that are happening, I think it's important that we should revisit some of the things that have worked in the past. There's a lot of information out there right now saying that these battery storage facilities, no matter how many they build or how safe they get or how many batteries they change from lithium to something else, they're all going to have to rely on some form of stable energy, such as natural gas or fossil fuels, because otherwise they become unstable and they are at risk of blowing up. And this is because the way that energy works and the transformation of energy is, as much energy is going in has to go out. And because wind farms and solar power have an influx of, whether the wind is strong or whether the sun is bright, that creates major drops in the storing. And even at the best 100% capacity, these battery storage facilities cannot power an entire city. And even if they could power a portion of the city, they can only do so for maybe 4 to 6 hours. So they're inherently not stable or reliable, and they require twice as much infrastructure. That means clearing more land, putting up double the wires that we see up and down the street all over the place. And they're not sustainable and they're not reliable, and so a backup energy is always going to have to be used. So that being said, why aren't we looking at other ways to either come up with a synthetic natural gas or come up with there's some other options out there that are coming to the table. I don't know much about carbon capture, but some type of upcycling or recycling of resources that we already know how to use, how to contain, how to transport, and that may be available here in the United States and are not going to cost, diesel and tariffs and so forth to be shipped here from other locations. Battery storage does not seem to be the answer. A great way to look at this is there's an example out there in Australia, which is really pushing towards green energy, and they're a very small, self-contained, continent, and they are seeing all these major setbacks for the installations of this green energy, quote, green energy. And, no matter how they revise their battery systems, we're talking about an unsustainable, and not safe situation because of the ebb and flow of the way that electricity works and how it needs to be used and how it needs to be stored. And so it seems to not make sense. So if we are going to have to rely on fossil fuels no matter what for these battery storage facilities to be stable at all, then why are we building them? Mm-hmm. Why aren't we revisiting technology that says, how do we get more efficient? And, I'm old fashioned. I'm in my early 40s, but when I was growing up on Earth Day, the word of my childhood was conservation. Mm-hmm. Where is our conservation? Why aren't we having more mitigation of how we use energy? And I also want people to be aware of this as well, because most people aren't. If you own an electric vehicle and you think that you're being eco-friendly, you are drawing as much from the grid on charging your EV as your entire household is. So for everyone that has an EV parked in front of their house thinking they're eco-friendly right now, they are doubling their demand on their grid simply by owning and charging their EV vehicle next to their house. And if their EV vehicle is inside their garage and catches fire, goodbye to your house. Yeah. So obviously this isn't working. It's not safe. It's not working. We need to go back to the drawing board. And I agree that, there needs to be more scrutiny on, our energy commissions across the board. Our communities and schools and hospitals where they're talking about building these things, they need to have a say in the permit process. We need to have a panel of scientists in the process, because it's right. She's totally right in saying that, when these permits went forward and moved forward, and they were presented to the county, I heard from our commissioners in the Moss Landing Harbor, they were all invited to tour this facility, but they were given so much filibuster language. Oh, this is so safe and this is so backed up. And for a layman, you go in there and you look at all. I heard it was described as what looked like a space station. You go in there and you look at it and you go, okay, this looks very advanced. It's probably monitored well, but without the proper background or scientific background or chemical hazard background or any of those things or an engineering background, you can't look at that stuff and say or know what could possibly happen. But what we do know is outside of Moss Landing failing 5 times in 5 years across the United States and the rest of the world, we are seeing the same failure rate of these battery facilities everywhere. They are bursting in flames, and people aren't sure what to do.
Becky,
yeah, I hear you,
Becky.
Liza. No, Nina, just a minute. So what I want to say is I think you're both spot on. And we've got to get the people together because we don't always know what we don't know. That's the issue, isn't it? And we're blasted with a bunch of acronyms and technical jargon and lies, essentially, in many cases. So, Nina, we've got 7 minutes, and I want to give you a chance to give some more information. I want to know, too, though, what has been the word from the North County Fire Department? Are they silent, too? So, Nina, go ahead, and then, Liza, I want to let you finish out. And, Nina, I'm going to give you a 2-minute warning. Go ahead, please. Hello?
Yeah, so, Becky, I'm not understanding who's speaking right now.
You are.
Okay, so I just wanted to plug for this fancy quasi-scientific jargon and language that the renewable energy developers and New Leaf Energy for us in Santa Cruz County push aggressively. So, for instance, there's a big push to claim that LFP, lithium iron phosphate chemistry, is a much safer, more stable chemistry. But there is a lot of information online about a confirmed LFP containerized battery fire in Germany last year. It was one of 3 in the same solar co-located with battery storage facility in Thuringia, Germany. One of those 3 fires is confirmed LFP. The other 2 are questionable because the information is out there. There was also a fire in another area of Germany in the north, a little town called Nearmoor. There were 100 firefighters on the scene. It was also an LFP fire in April of last year. It burned for 10 hours. Same thing, they shut down the highway, the Autobahn. They told everybody to go inside and close their doors from 11:30 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. More than 1 container burned. There's photos of this all over the internet. One of the issues, besides claiming that LFP is not dangerous when containerized LFP battery fires have occurred already, one of the other big issues is that these fires are not reported consistently. So in Palo Alto, there's the Electrical Power Research Institute that is claiming to track these fires, but they're only tracking what's available through media. And in many areas of the world, there are incentives not to report these fires. In America, fires were not required, or failures at these facilities were not required to be reported until March 13th of this year, after the massive disaster at Moss Landing, when the CPUC passed that General Order 167, which now requires a report within 24 hours. But before that, even here in America, they were not required to be reported. There's a firefighter, Patrick Durham, who is a captain and a training officer for the Troy Fire Department in Michigan, who has a big website called the /D training website. And he did a really good presentation of the BESS fire at Nearmoor in Germany. And then, so he also quotes in that YouTube, for instance, that there have been 30 BESS fires in the last 2 years, 15 per year, many of them containerized fires. So the statements, for instance, by New Leaf Energy that containerizing is much safer, or that LFP is much safer, there is no way to make lithium chemistry safe. And the CPUC went public at a recent webinar that I watched and said, just frankly and simply, we do not have a way to suppress these fires. And so did the Captain Durham, in his YouTube. He said there is no way to suppress these fires. You have to leave them alone and let them burn.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a viable clean energy application amidst residential homes, agricultural land. It's just, this is horrible.
It is.
The risk is way too high.
It is. We are almost out of time. I want to thank both of you for calling in today, Liza Schmidt and Nina Audino, for calling in. Nina, please give the information about Monday's meeting one more time quickly, and then I'm going to give the last word to Liza.
Okay, so the public meeting is on Monday, April 14th. It starts at 6:30. We'll go for a couple of hours until 8:30. It's at the Watsonville Church of the Nazarene at 710 Green Valley Road. There's plenty of parking.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nina, for all you're doing and getting information out to the people. I know you are relentlessly researching things. Thank you. Liza, I want to give you the last 45 seconds. Thank you so much for calling, and we're going to hear you Monday night, too. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to dovetail on what she was saying about the fires not being reported. It is because Vistra here has their own privatized fire department, and it is hearsay through the community and, supposed employees of Vistra that this is actually closer to the 25th fire, but that 20 fires were resolvable within their privatized fire department before they escalated to having to North County. And North County reported the same exact thing that she's saying, which is they had no options but to stand by. And at some point they moved away from the fire, to the harbor to mitigate it spreading to other places, but we're unable to do anything except stand by and watch. And that's what makes these things extremely scary and extremely dangerous, is there's no way to put them out.
Yeah.
So I will be speaking, and the best thing that we can do as a community is just continue community engagement, contact your legislators, participate in protests, and defend your community, because it's up to us to do so.
You are right. Thank you so much for calling, both of you. We are out of
Thank
time,
you.
off the air, and I've got to scoot. We'll see you both Monday night. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Becky.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
How's it going?
It is going.
So is it true they're making all that construction on that middle section into a giant bus lane?
The one off on the side is.
The lane that's going to be the buses is the right.
Oh, okay. So what are they doing with the big part in the middle? That's all empty.
That's
That's going to be the new center lane when they finish.
Okay, so that's actually going to be